If you have questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to utilize the chat box. We will have a brief question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Ms. Hemani, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Like Dan said, my session's called The Future of Skills. Who will you be in 2030? And that sounds like a really existential question. You know, it's only 10 years from now. But what I really mean by this is, how do we prepare ourselves and how do we create a job profile for the future of work? So let's go ahead, and I'm going to just do an overview of what we're talking about today. So I've used 2030 because that is a milestone that a lot of bodies of research reference, a lot of policies reference too, but really it's shorthand for the future and the future of work. And the whole of today's session is going to be based on a body of research called Pearson's Future of Skills research. And just a disclaimer, I did not personally do this research. It was done by Pearson's Thought Leadership Department in collaboration with Oxford, University of Oxford, Martin School, and an organization called Nesta. But this research is something I come back to over and over again in my work, and I feel like it's an extremely useful tool for educators who are trying to become future-proof. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve with this session, is go over the research, look at what the future of work is going to be like, and Mr. Ben Knight, who preceded me, did a really great job of overviewing all of that. Some of my information will be the same, and then talk about how we as educators can get ready for the future. So I hope you enjoy that. That's what we'll be talking about for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. So let's think about the future, the workforce of 2030. So in the immediate future, we speak a lot about remote working, about being connected to colleagues from all over the globe, and about the new normal. We've heard the new normal come up a lot. But if we cast our nets a little bit further and think about the distant, or maybe not so distant, but in the next 10 years, the conversation starts to focus a lot on automation. And when we hear automation, it can get a little bit creepy even. So we hear about the simulation and robots taking over and us against them, you know, and it is very antagonistic and scary. But the reality is somewhere in the middle. So it shouldn't be this scary thing. It is true that a lot of jobs will be replaced by automation, but this is actually a good thing. And it's something that we need to dive into a little bit deeper. So Pearson's research shows that we don't actually have to agonize about robots taking over. Unless, of course, you want that to happen. Some people are really into robots. But because only 1 in 5 workers are actually going to be replaced or swapped out. Only 1 in 5 workers are in occupations that will actually shrink. So this figure is a lot lower than some other figures that have come out of a previous research, which is focused on maybe a single lens. But there is going to be a change, a big change. So 1 in 10 workers are in occupations that are likely to grow. Not that much. So 9 out of 10 are not in occupations that are likely to grow. And 7 in 10 workers are in jobs where there is greater uncertainty about the future. Now, that just means that we have to change what we do, change how we prepare for work. So we have to think, am I preparing for a job that's not going to exist in the future? And just get more agile about how we get ready for the workforce of the future. The most likely scenario here is that high-level occupation or role types will remain or may remain. And the skill mix that's required within these roles will broaden and in some cases change entirely. So the key word of this session today is really skills. So you won't probably have to share your lunch break with a robot, which might be a good thing or might be a bad thing, but you will have to change how you think about work, how you think about preparing for work, and how you imagine the future of work to look like. So spoiler alert, it's not going to look how it looks now. So Pearson's research really focuses on, I mentioned this before, broadening the lens. Okay, often when we talk about the future of work, we think about it through the lens of automation. But with the Pearson research, we've actually applied a few more lenses than that. So 6 more lenses to be precise. And this is how we've actually framed our research. So we're looking at 7 global mega trends, such as globalization, of course, demographic changes, environmental sustainability, urbanization, increasing inequality, which is a very important factor, and then technological changes. So technological changes here encompasses automation, of course, but also with our research, it incorporates other factors like adoption of innovation, diffusion of innovation also, and the complexities and the interrelatedness of these trends. So what we're trying to do is paint a much more nuanced picture of what it will mean to be a worker in 2030 and beyond, and by extension, what it means for us now who are preparing students to enter this workforce. Okay. So here you can see that even though I did say robots are not taking over, there are going to be some jobs that are at risk. Okay, so these are the at-risk categories of work. And I don't know if you've ever heard of something called IBM Watson. IBM Think, there's a tool called Watson, and this is not a person, it is a piece of artificial intelligence technology, and this technology is actually graduated from medical school using its AI. It's been able to go through a whole course of study, a medical study actually. It's also won the quiz on Jeopardy! So when it comes to information, it's very, very astute at categorizing information and doing routine analysis of information. So, you know, with a resume like that, you can see how Watson could be attractive to employees, more attractive than a human being. So what we're really taking from this is that jobs that are predictable or analytic in the sense that they're just about analyzing lines and lines of data, those types of jobs are the ones that are going to go or be replaced, okay? So, you know, think about analyzing data. You can actually do that better with an AI than a human in most circumstances because there's no human error, right? So what we're really looking at a shift away from is kind of what we consider normal middle-class jobs, you know, such as working in a bank, administration, those type of things that are just quite routine. And these jobs, like what's over here, personal assistants, administration workers, real estate agents, these are the jobs that are 85% likely to reduce over the next 20 years, okay? But there are also a lot of areas where jobs are going to grow. So I think if you were in the previous session, you would have seen Mr. Ben Knight talk about a lot of these jobs too, or if anywhere you look when it comes to research about the future of work. This is not new. So this list here with the food prep workers, sports workers, teachers, this is, the data supports other studies that predict a boom in these areas. So a boom in care, service, and education related sectors. But this is just where our research starts. So for us, it's not about jobs, it's actually about skills. Okay, new jobs are being created every day because of new technologies. You know, think about social media influencers, Uber drivers, those type of jobs didn't exist before. And we just need to learn how to best adapt and plan for the future. So a quote that I read from a 17-year-old actually entrepreneur, his name is Taj Pabari, and he said that knowledge in today's economy is worthless because we're working with an innovation economy here. It's not about what you know, but what's more important these days is what you do with what you know. And what we're trying to do with universities is we don't want to manufacture these walking, talking textbooks. You know, we're really trying to focus on getting students the skills that they need to tackle problems that don't even exist yet. So it gets really interesting when you look at the data on the occupation level, you know, beyond the occupation level, sorry, the skills level. What skills and abilities will be most in demand in 2030? When we look at skills that we can acquire, this is something that we can do right away. We can start learning how to develop these Hi, sorry, I think I just cut off for a second.
No problem. We can hear you perfectly now. Go
Cool.
ahead and continue.
Great. Okay, so so I didn't get the chat messages. Were you not able to hear me before? Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead. So what I was saying was that when we look at the skills that we can acquire, and acquiring skills is something we can do immediately, it is something we can do right now, and it's about becoming more agile and becoming more human. So the job market in the next couple of years will see a lot of certain skills succeed, and that's what we really want to focus on. So in the next sort of 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about the research that this presentation is based on. But before that, I want to just show you this video, which is part of our research, about why we are focusing on skills and not occupations. So hopefully this video is going to play. Let's see. Might have to make it a bit louder. Oh, sorry.
So in 2013, we wrote a paper looking at the future automatability of current employment. And as part of that, we held a workshop in Oxford to ask some of the best people we knew about what they could see in the technological trends and how that was likely to affect the future of work. But subsequent to that analysis, we were quite often asked what that meant for skills and education. And we didn't really have clear answers. So it's really a pleasure to be involved in this project, which puts that question, the future demand for skills, at its centre.
So in recent years, a number of people have come to Nesta and have come to me and asked for my advice on what sort of skills areas the government should be focused on in developing its workforce. And this research is important because it, in a very interesting and novel way, generates predictions and actionable insights that policymakers can act on. Previous studies which have looked at the future of work tend to focus on how automatable or not an occupation is. Our research is distinguished from those previous studies by focusing on skills. And skills is something that, whatever job you're in, there's something you can do about. And if you invest in the right skills, you can leave yourself better placed to benefit from the opportunities of the future. So if there's one thing we can say with any certainty about the future, is that it will look very, very different to the past. So that high degree of uncertainty is the environment in which governments, individuals, employers are trying to make their decisions about skills, investments, and occupations.
It's important for people to be always learning throughout their career. The importance of collaborating, of working as part of teams, developing those higher order cognitive skills where you can interpret, analyze, make connections between seemingly different pieces of information, persuade others of your argument, that you can provide good service and insight, that you can empathize, care, and be concerning of others. These are skills that are going to be in greater demand than ever.
Okay, so what we take from that is that skills are really where it's at in the future. And we've created this massive body of research called the Future of Skills Research. And you can actually access this on a really nice interactive site called futureskills.pearson.com. And this research combines a lot of scoping of trends beyond automation. So the 7 skills I mentioned before. So it's a very nuanced picture of the future. And what's really exciting about this is that you can also go in, if you go to explore the landscape, you can go right in there and check what kind of, what result the future will have on your job. Okay, so I'm gonna just do that very quickly. I'm gonna show you what that means. So by clicking explore the landscape, just want to make sure my screen is still sharing with you. Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen and we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, awesome. So if you choose between the US and the UK, because that's what this research is based on, you can go in And I'm going to write my name here, and my year of birth, and my job title. So you can search for all sorts of job titles. Let's just pick one at random. So let's look at bakers and flour confectioners. Okay. So this is going to tell you how old you'll be in 2030, which I don't need to know, but it will also tell you how much your job is going to grow. So a baker's and flour confectioner's job has a 54% chance of growth by 2030. And to be better, to future-proof yourself in this job, these are the type of skills that you're going to need to prepare yourself for in order to make yourself more competitive. So you can go in and see these jobs: oral comprehension, service orientation, oral expression, which is part of learning English, I suppose, and you can check what these mean here. You can do it for all sorts of jobs. So you can change your job title. Okay, let's check something a bit different, something that you at the university might be preparing your students for, which is business professionals, okay? Okay, that will show you that business professionals have a 55% chance of growth by 2030. Now, this is a business and related research. Research is something that can, to a certain extent, be automated. And this is how you would create a USP for yourself. So this is how you would make yourself stand out, by getting really good at becoming more fluent with your ideas, of becoming original. And we can do this for the US or the UK. And what's really great here is that you can explore the landscape, but you can also go in and read the research. So I would advise all of you to go in. I'd like to invite you to check out this research. It's really interesting. But let's just look a little bit more at what this means for us. So how do we actually get ready for the future? Okay. What does this actually mean? So I mentioned before the research focused on some skills, and this is just like a summary of the top 10 skills for the USA and the UK that are rising and will be in demand in 2030. So stuff like coordination, originality, analyzing systems, being able to communicate your ideas fluently, those are really in demand. And currently our education system is very good at teaching students information, facts and processes, you know? And like I said, in the knowledge economy, in a world where all information is accessible through Google or other forms of technology, having a large bank of knowledge in your head is not that useful. So what we really want to think about is, how are we teaching soft skills? Are we teaching them in an ancillary way? Are we neglecting them altogether? Are we focusing on what students need just to get past an assessment? All those questions are really important when we think about what we're trying to do at university with regards to preparing our students for the future. So let's do a little activity. Let's think of an engineer. Okay, so just picture in your mind a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer. And I want you to just, in the chat box, if you can, could you let me know what characteristics you currently associate with engineers, and what skills do engineers currently need to utilize? So if you think about maybe your cousin or your uncle or your brother or sister, aunt or uncle, actually, it could be a man or woman, or even maybe some of your students that are preparing to be engineers, what kind of sticks out to you? So what characteristics do you associate with them, and what skills do you think they need to utilize? Organized, creative, project management, organized, very organized. Analytic is what often comes up when we talk about engineers. Science, knowledge, problem solvers, definitely. Excellent, spatial intelligence. Okay, awesome. So now let's look at this list of skills and knowledges here. What occupations spring to your mind when you see these knowledge and skills, this type of stuff? So someone who has these aspects, what kind of job do you think they'll be doing? PR, a lecturer. Very good. Teaching, yeah, linguistics, teaching. Yeah, that's what would come to my mind immediately. But actually, this is a profile of an engineer. So from the chat box, I see that these things, these characteristics, they didn't actually pop up when we thought about engineer. But when you think about it, we thought about an engineer in the year 2020, but the list that I gave you, that's actually the skills that are going to be valuable for an engineer in 2030. So at first, it might seem incongruous, but if you think about it, even if we just consider one of the trends that I mentioned, so urbanization, for example, you think about it, an engineer in 2030 who has to focus on a highly urbanizing society. I mean, Bahrain is one of them, the sea dredging, all of those things, creating more space for people to live in an urban environment. You know, you think that engineers, they aren't just required to design and create structures. You know, they also have to create structures that are thriving with purpose. You know, they have to be able to create structures that support high density urban communities in a meaningful way, in a design oriented way. You know, they have to become social architects or social engineers as much as they are civil engineers. So to do this, they have to have knowledge of sociology. They have to understand how people move, how people group together. They have to be able to be perceptive. They have to listen to people's ideas. They have to take a design thinking, problem solving approach. You know, things like gentrification. That's something that they might have to really grapple with in 2030. The world is going to look very different in 2030. So this is the kind of thinking that we're really focusing on. You know, who will you actually be in 2030, and what future skills do you need to incorporate? So a lot of you said teachers, lecturers, all those things, people jobs. You know, being a teacher is a job that actually is one of those projected to really keep going, you know, keep growing. But actually, to be successful in any job in the future, you're going to need to incorporate those human skills. Being a teacher or a lecturer is a very human job. You're always interacting with people. You have to make decisions on the fly. You have to be very socially perceptive. And a lot of other jobs will also require that of their employees. So that's what we're trying to develop for everyone. Service orientation is really important. You might think that, oh, I don't work in a service category job, but actually everything will be service orientated, because anything that doesn't require that human touch will be replaced by a robot. So this is what we really want to focus on. And another report by Ernst & Young has called for a really drastic overhaul of university degrees so that they can match employer requirements. So we're not at that point yet where the whole of university has changed. We haven't been disrupted to that degree, but what you can start focusing on as an educator is how can we prepare students for the future of work by developing the skills they need for the future. So a great place to start is in these 5 areas: fluency of ideas, which means lateral thinking, generate a number of ideas quickly; active learning, which is like learning on the job, self-directed learning; learning strategies, so students being able to generate their own thoughts and feelings; and originality and coordination. So coordination refers to capacity to organize their own work, an employee or student's capacity to organize their own work. So just before I end the session, let's look at a potential job in the future. This is a hypothetical example of an occupation that is likely to exist, maybe not in 2030, but maybe in the future. So this is Kevin. Kevin's job is a 100-year life counselor. So he has a background in journalism and in teaching, community college teaching, but in the future, unprecedented numbers of people are living to 100 years old, or even past 100 years old, okay? And for these people, navigating the mental and the physical and emotional challenges of staying in the workforce, as well as coming to terms with old age, is very complex. And this is the type of job where Kevin, who has a background in journalism and teaching, will become really valuable. So Kevin lost his job as a newspaper journalist and he needed to switch careers. So that's something we have to think about too. We're going to be working for longer. So we're going to have to be more flexible and dynamic in the type of jobs we move. We might have to change careers halfway through or change jobs halfway through. And he has become a counselor who is helping people reskill in response to transitions in their lives. So he found that his skills that he honed while being a journalist and a teacher, such as social perceptiveness and also conveying complex ideas, are really useful when talking to mature students. So Kevin realized that he could actually take his skill set and transfer it to a job that doesn't exist or didn't exist when he was training. Okay, and this is a really interesting concept that we have to think about. So I would advise you to think about the world in 10 or 20 years. What kind of jobs are likely to exist that don't exist now or can't even exist now? And think about the skills you need for that. So what we're actually doing as educators is coaching students to be more of themselves, okay, more human, but enabling them to acquire the skills that will empower and advance their careers. So it's like teaching a student how to drive. You know, once you teach a teen how to drive, they can go anywhere. So we're putting students in the driver's seat and we're helping them solve problems that don't even exist yet. Thanks. So now if we have time, we can go into some questions.
Thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. Such a timely topic for today's workforce and for higher education. So we do have one question. How are textbooks changing to meet the need of how skills are taught? Do you have any ideas about that?
Excellent question to ask someone who works at a publisher. So that also, again, is a very existential question. So textbooks themselves might become obsolete, depending on the type of knowledge that they have in them. So I think what's definitely changing a lot with the way that we publish learning resources is making things more project-based and signposting the type of skills that different activities will help a student acquire. Okay, so it's actually, you can still teach skills. Teaching is not going out of the window and knowledge is not disappearing either. But what we're actually doing is we're pivoting from raw knowledge, facts, figures, that type of thing, to really using our learning time to develop students' skills. And developing skills comes through practice and iteration. So I would say that textbooks are changing to incorporate more of these objectives, learning objectives and outcomes, and project-based learning is a great way of doing that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, for your energy and enthusiasm, and for your excellent ideas about this topic. We really appreciate your presentation and appreciate
you so much. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe mute myself, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you.